Welcome to today's episode. I'm joined by a very special guest, a friend, an incredible RTT coach and therapist, a woman navigating menopause, living with ADHD, and who is grounded very deeply in her spiritual practice. Today, we're diving into healing, identity, emotional evolution, and the real inner journey behind transformation. This conversation is about truth, humanity, and the power of rewriting our inner story. Hi Chrissy, for people who are meeting you for the first time, how would you describe you are beyond your professional titles? And I'd like to also talk about your work briefly. So let's explore your work and magic that you bring to RTT. In your own words, what makes RTT different to other therapeutic practices?
I think the reason I chose to train in RTT actually is what makes it different. So I trained as a life coach, and that's how I was working, and previously a mental health nurse. So I've got quite a lot of knowledge about mental illness, and then stepping into coaching, I was kind of growing my knowledge about mental wellness actually, which is quite different. But I would be working with clients, and we'd get to a certain point, and I'd know that there was something deeper, there's something else that we weren't getting to. And a client of mine actually, a coaching client, said that she'd found RTT. And then when I looked into it, I thought, yeah, this is the missing link. And I've trained in different therapies before that. So I was trained in solution-focused brief, solution-focused brief therapy, CBT, psychodynamic psychotherapy. So I've got a lot of knowledge about how the mind works and what drives our behaviours and stuff. But working with RTT, which is a type of hypnosis, you just got to the core, the root of the problems so much more quickly, and then you're able to deal with them. So that's what RTT does. It's a guided hypnosis, and we use regression as a technique to get back to the beginning of people's problems. And then there's a transformation process within the session itself. So that's what drew me to that, is being able to go deeper and get really underneath, and not take, as in psychodynamic psychotherapy, you could take 5 years, 10 years to talk about what's going on. What RTT does is working with the subconscious mind, so you can do it quickly. And that's the world we live in, isn't it? We all want solutions now. We're used to moving quickly through life, and I think working in a really short-term way, it helps people move forward more quickly. Does that answer your question?
Is there a core belief that often clients want to rewrite when they come and visit you?
Yeah, I think there's a few, but the big one that I hear from people, or they don't perhaps word it in this way, but they just don't love themselves enough. I'm not enough in whatever way, and you can put that in, I'm not happy enough, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not good enough. There's so many different versions of enough, but it all comes back down to that some of them don't even like themselves very much, but it's the self-love that's the missing piece. And underneath that, if you don't love yourself, you can't trust yourself either. So they're making poor decisions about how they live their life, and it all comes back to this lack of self-love.
How has RTT helped you in your own journey?
Well, I've had RTT quite a few times over the years. We had to have it as part of the training when I did the training, so that was my first experience of it. I didn't experience it before I went for the training, I just thought, no, I need to do that. And then had a taster of it whilst I was there. And, you know, we've all got that wound, that lack of self-love. And definitely I have, you know, a lack of self-esteem, a lack of self-belief. And so I've worked on that more than once. And it's interesting because you can work on something once and you're not done. You know, there's different layers. And so if you work on that self-love belief and you think, right, okay, that's it now. I do love myself. I'm going to move off and do all this stuff. Of course, you're leveling up. So if you're doing harder things, the beliefs come up again in a different way. So that's why I've had more than one session. You know, you can't just solve everything in one session. But it's getting back to the core, what's underneath it all. And for a lot of people, and for me, it's that, am I enough? And I can say I am until I do something else that requires me to step out of my comfort zone. And then I'm like, oh, okay, there's still something there that needs tweaking.
What are some practices that you've discovered in RTT that you've used yourself that could potentially help someone start in this process, starting their RTT journey?
That's a good question. It's a good question, but RTT itself is definitely, you need guidance. You need to be working with somebody. But there are some, you know, core things about the way we do it. So the rules of the mind. So we're working with that all the time. And one of them is that your mind believes what you tell it, which is like the law of attraction. So you're in control of your thinking. It may not feel like it all the time, but we all are. So if you tell your mind that good things are going to happen, they are more likely to happen. If you tell your mind that you are enough, it starts to believe you. So you've really got to, you've got to reframe your thinking. And you know, when clients come to me for RTT, they're already in the mindset that actually this is going to work for me. And you can tell if someone comes and they're skeptical, it's harder. The work is harder. And actually, if someone comes and they know about RTT and they're ready to make changes and they believe that the work is going to work for them, it's so much easier to work with them because they've already shifted something in their thinking. So that is one of the rules of the mind. Tell yourself good things and then you're more likely to be able to make changes.
With my own experiences, Chrissy, diving into healing identity and emotional evolution, what are some of the transformations that you've experienced yourself going through that process, learning more about yourself? How has it helped you to become a better therapist, a better life coach, a better woman, would you say?
Oh, it's a big question, isn't it? So if I think back to the first RTT session that I had, I'll start before that actually. So I would say, you know, the beliefs that we have about ourselves, me included, mostly stem from childhood, mostly come in, they're kind of built, these core beliefs, between the ages of 1 and 7 or 0 and 7, whether we notice it or not, because of the way that we respond to the people around us, the people in our lives. So, you know, it's easy to see that if someone's had a shit upbringing or something horrible's happened to them in their childhood, they've got some experience of trauma, it's easy to see where those core beliefs might have come from. With me, so we're talking about my experience, I had a nice childhood, I had a nice upbringing. Nothing traumatic has ever happened to me, lucky me. And yet, there's this core belief of not being good enough. or not being enough in some way, shape or form. So and it still is, it's intriguing to me that we can still have massive hang-ups that can really hold us back in our lives when we don't have a big event to relate them to. So what I'm going to say is that these core beliefs that we grow up with, that we develop over our childhood and are fully formed almost by the age of 7, they can relate to the smallest little thing, the tiniest little thing, one thing that somebody said in a conversation that you weren't even part of, that someone was talking around you. They can be, so it's not about the event itself or the thing that was said or the trauma that happened. It's about how we shaped our meaning around it. So I'll give you an example from that first session. So I remember going back in regression, what's going on here, and I was a baby in a cot, and I was completely on my own, which is odd because I'm a twin, and I was never on my own, never. From birth, before birth, I was with somebody. So this memory of being in a cot alone, what meaning did that baby, that version of me, make from that? I'd been abandoned. And what had actually happened, because I've explored it consciously with my mum, is when she'd given birth to both of us, we were then whisked away to be looked after by midwives and nurses for a couple of days, because that was what happened. And it was just how the hospital ran its maternity services at the time. You give the mother a rest, bring the child in for feeding, and then take them away again. And in my baby mind, I'd been abandoned the minute I was taken away from my mum. Nothing to do with her, nothing to do with anything, but it was a system in the hospital. So you can see, so what beliefs does that bring in straight away is, oh, no one wants me, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not a good enough baby, or you can see how those things can arise from that situation, which is in no one's control apart from the hospital system, who thought they were doing a good thing by giving mother a break, because once she gets home with these 2 babies, she's on 24 hours a day. So here, have a rest before you go home. And yet the impact that had on me, and not my brother, I've never asked him, but is that I'm left with this feeling of abandonment. So, and constantly then perhaps in childhood trying to be a good girl, not do anything wrong, not question anything, not argue about anything, just be good so that I don't get abandoned again. So you can see how that journey of development in my mind might have developed. So that was one of the things that came up. Does that answer the question?
From your own experience that you've just spoken about, how has that contributed to you about you being a mother? Do any of those sort of feelings arise when you're looking after your own children?
I mean, yes. I mean, with all my training, the fear is that you're going to fuck up your kid. Excuse my French. But the thing is, we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. So all I can be is the best that I can be. And so I'm going to say no, it hasn't influenced the way I parent, because there's nothing I can do no wrong, I can do no good. Do you see what I mean? So it makes no difference what I do, as long as I am caring and nurturing, and I mean, he's my child, he's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I love him so much that I never want to be away from him, and yet I want to be away from him, But yeah, so there's nothing I can do. And he may grow up and have experiences, and you know, if he goes to therapy, it might be all my fault. There's nothing I can do about that. I will parent as I parent.
From when we last saw each other, Chrissy, you mentioned to me that you're currently going through the menopause, which is such a personal and transformative season for you to go through. What do you think people misunderstand most about the menopause?
God. It's interesting that you use the word season, because it is a change in season, I think. What do people most misunderstand? I suppose I misunderstood it. You know, you think it's simple, like you just stop bleeding and that's the end of it. But it's not. It's such a massive shift in every part of your being. And yeah, and then, you know, you hear about people talking about hot flushes and stuff, and that's not it. That's just one thing. There are so many symptoms that you wouldn't even, I can't even list them because everybody's different. Somebody I was talking to the other day said she had itchy ears, and that's a symptom. How she knows, I do not know. But for me, it's been my mental health that's been difficult, actually. It's almost as though it kind of brought back all the insecurities that I ever had and amplified them, which is really weird, and really uncomfortable and really annoying and really disappointing. You know, I could use so many different negative words about it, which is tricky. And yet, what it also does, I'm okay to swear, aren't I? What it also does is make you not give a fuck either about what people think anymore. And it makes, you know, certainly for me, it's like, I'm going to say what I think and I don't care. And I've never been like that. You know, if we go back to earlier in our conversation, you know, I was constantly trying to be the good girl and do the right thing. I've always been a people pleaser. And now I just don't care. It's not that I don't care, but I'm just going to say what I think. And how people respond to that, it's up to them, isn't it? It's nothing to do with me. So it's made me more assertive. It's made me, I mean, you know, there's all the negative things as well, but it has definitely made me more, I feel clearer in how I speak, because I'm not beating around the bush, trying to find the right words, trying to not upset anyone. And you know, the weird thing is, I don't upset people anyway. It's not in my nature. But I think I've spent so much time overthinking, you know, and worrying about how I come across. And now I just don't care. So the timing of this podcast interview actually is perfect, because if we'd have met up a few years ago and done this, I may have not been so honest, actually. I may not have been the real version of myself, because I was trying to live up to the person that I think other people think I am, which is a real complicated mess, isn't it? But actually, so it's made me more real.
So what compassion going through that did you need to give yourself, going through those experiences?
A lot of self-compassion. And that is something I've had to learn, you know. I mean, we all have that inner voice, the critical inner voice I'm talking about, that says, oh, you can't do it like that. Oh, be careful, you don't want to do it like that. And, you know, or, oh, that was shit. Why did you do that? You know, overanalyzing everything you say, everything you do, My inner voice is very, very loud. And I've really had to tell it where to go, to be honest, because without self-compassion, I don't know how anyone gets through this. It's just, it can feel relentless, you know? So giving yourself a break and time and space and comfort and kind words is just so important.
Going through the menopause yourself, Chrissy, how has that shifted your sense of purpose or direction?
I don't know yet because I'm still in it. So I'm in perimenopause. I haven't quite hit the menopause bit yet. I suppose what I think about that, it's like, you know, when you meet people and you do the superficial talk and you have little chats about the weather and what you did last night and what's on TV, or, you know, something completely irrelevant to life. I don't care about that. I've always been the person who wanted the deeper conversations anyway. And now I'm at the point where I just can't be asked to tolerate it. So I'm not going to stick around for the small talk. I don't know quite about purpose. I think purpose for all of us changes over time. So I'm not sure if I can answer a question about purpose, but I do know that I don't want to waste time on the small stuff when there's so many other things that we could be doing and, you know, working out and going, you know, the bigger things, the more important things. So I don't know if that answers the question.
During our last conversation, Chrissy, you informed me that you've been diagnosed with ADHD, which brings its own challenges and strengths. How did receiving that first initial diagnosis, how did that impact you?
Well, just before I tell you about that, I think that perimenopause is the gift that just keeps giving. So this diagnosis only came to light when my hormones started changing. So I was never like the naughty, busy kid at school or anything. I was quiet. And so what we know now about ADHD in women and girls is that it does present differently, and that it's not just the wild kid that is out of control. So, yeah, as soon as the hormone changes kicked in, that's when I started having problems with my thinking and my memory and managing all the different things that I was trying to do. So to get the diagnosis was a complete relief. I went to get the diagnosis because I felt, having, you know, watched a million YouTube videos, TED Talks, you know what it's like when you've looked for something in your phone, it keeps showing you the same things over and over. And what I was seeing was women in perimenopause who suddenly couldn't function right. So that's what I suspected was wrong. And then, so to get the diagnosis, like, oh, okay, good, this makes sense. And I think once you do that and then you start looking at the symptoms and the way things played out, I could look back over my whole life and go, oh yeah, that's what was happening. I can see it. I can see the flares of not being able to cope with life and, you know, complete emotional all over the placeness, which is emotional dysregulation. And not knowing what to do with it, not knowing how to manage all of that. And now, of course, so what ADHD, having that label of ADHD has given me the ability to find out how to manage those moments and that stuff, so that I can manage life. And I do take medication now for it as well. And without the medication, I have so many thoughts. So it's like I was saying, I wasn't the busy kid that was, not sitting still and not moving around, because that busyness was all happening inside my head. It was my brain, my thoughts, my thinking, my beliefs, everything was so jumbled up. And without medication now, that becomes completely overwhelming. And I can't perform normal life. So going back to diagnosis, I think the reason I sought the diagnosis is because it was impacting on my life so much. And I think, that's probably the same, isn't it? For any diagnosis, you only reach out for that kind of help if your life is being impacted and you're not able to live it fully. So perimenopause and ADHD were the two things that were standing out over the last few years that were stopping me from being me.
Do you think that ADHD has given you any strengths or creative abilities with your healing process, and also healing work, being a coach and a therapist?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that. Has it given me any strengths? I mean, even before any kind of diagnosis, the way I've always worked, when I was a nurse, when I, whatever work I was doing, it's like I feel a lot of empathy for other people. And always, how would I feel if I was this person that I'm trying to help? And not everyone does that. And I know that because I've worked with so many different other professionals, that they cannot put themselves in the patient, the client, the user's shoes. And I can completely. And that maybe is related to the ADHD. I don't know. Maybe it's not. But I'm definitely an empath. And it's that has made me a better healer, I suppose, is that ability to put myself in someone else's shoes. What would I need? What would I want if I was experiencing this problem, whatever it was? So I think anything that I've had, I want to say to people generally, but that's not true. So anything I've had over the years has made me better at what I do. And part of the reason for that is because I get hyper-focused on stuff. So I hyper-focused on the ADHD. I went down a complete rabbit hole, found out everything I possibly could about it. Same with perimenopause. And in so doing, I've looked into ways of eating that support the brain, that support hormones. Previously, over the years, I've been diagnosed with depression more than once. And so, again, I've absolutely rabbit-holed those topics, why people end up there, why people have suicidal thoughts, why... and so that can only make you better at what you do when you work in this field. So those, maybe the hyper-focus is a strength, and I've certainly utilised it. I can lose myself in research, and finding better ways to live. It can be frustrating then if you go and see a GP who doesn't have that mind of information. So you're going, actually, I need your intervention now, but they don't know, they don't have the knowledge that I've had because I've deep dived on it. So that can be frustrating, that other people don't have, that they're in positions of power and authority and yet they don't have the knowledge that I've got.
How would you like that to change moving forward?
I think it's really, I mean, speaking as, you know, from a GP perspective, I think it's really tricky because they've got to be a jack of all trades, haven't they? And it's, you don't know who's going to come through the door. So yes, there are people that specialise in certain areas, but I don't know. I honestly don't know. From a GP perspective, I don't know how they do that to the extent that is needed when, you know, there's so many different areas to be focused on. And, you know, I'm not even looking at the physical health stuff. There's so many different things, isn't there, that people need to know. But like, if you look at women's health particularly, we know it's under-researched. There hasn't been in the investment in hormonal health. So people don't know, and we're still trialling and erroring stuff. But equally, you know, men are more at risk of completing suicide, and there needs to be specialists for that, and how we support them. And what I'm saying, I suppose, is that the health service may not be fit for purpose, but how you fix it, I don't have an answer to that.
Going by what you've been shown throughout our conversation so far, I get a deep sense you're deeply spiritual. I can see, I can feel that. I love to explore this side with you. So how would you describe your spiritual path that you've been on so
rocky. Far? Definitely rocky. And it's interesting because I think it's only come to me in the last probably 10 years or so, is that I've been working in a different way, on a different level. So it's come as a bit of a surprise to me. And it's like anything, you know, you seek stuff out when you most need it. So when I first found energy healing, I was in a desperate place, of course. And that's how a lot of people find stuff, isn't it? And then it's just, again, it's piqued my interest in a variety of ways. So I've gone down different rabbit holes of different ways of healing. We have a pack of tarot cards sitting in front of us now. I've always used tarot, even like when I was a teenager, I played around with it. When I was at uni, I did a palm reading course, which I didn't keep up, but I did it because I was intrigued by it. You know, what can we learn just from what we have in front of us? So I always I pull daily cards for myself. If I'm working with a client, I will always pull a card. I may or may not tell them, depending on how spiritual they are, how well I know them. But it always gives me some information about the person sitting in front of me and what they perhaps need from me. The cards are always right. So there are times when I lose that kind of connection. I get too busy, and then I'm reminded in some way that I need to go back to it. So yeah, energy work is really important, and I think it's the missing link for a lot of people, is this connection to something bigger than us. And that, you know, some people may call that God, and that's fine. And I do think that we need that. Humanity needs that connection. But perhaps not in a sense of organised religion.
Touching on your spiritual practices that you do, you mentioned before, tarot reading. Mm-hmm. What keeps you grounded through your everyday lives?
I think grounding is really important. And, you know, connection with nature, being outside. So I have 2 dogs that I walk daily, and that is extremely grounding. I do love being in nature. I will be hugging a tree if I'm in the right place, you know, and I like to touch things. I get a real, so I've got stones and shells and stuff all over the house because I can't resist picking up something beautiful. At some point I will put it back, but I'll have to bring it home for a bit just to get the feel for it. But yeah, I think we can't underestimate the power of that connection. And grounding itself is just so important. You know, there have been scientific studies on the power of grounding for physical illnesses. So again, another rabbit hole that I have been down. But, you know, wound healing and stuff, when they've done proper controlled trials in health services about people using, you know, general wound care techniques, but also then a group of people who are using grounding techniques, you know, and that connection to earth and source energy, the wounds heal more quickly. And I just think that's fascinating and potentially free, and we haven't tapped into it. So there's so much stuff we don't even know yet about life, and I just think that's incredible.
No, that's so true. What does healing look like for you on a spiritual level then, Chrissy?
I think it is about the connection, and knowing that there's something bigger than us. Because I do think, you know, if you've got a depressive illness or anxiety, imposter syndrome, those kinds of things, that is really so much about looking inwards. And I'm not, you know, in those moments, and I've been there, it's impossible to take that gaze away. It feels like, you know, if I just do something internally, then I'll be better, I'll be all right. But actually, if we can move that focus back out into the world and think about our connection to people, animals, nature, and then what we can give to others, that more outward gaze is what is healing. I hope that makes sense. But and I'm not, you know, I don't want to be like, if you have got depressive illness, refocusing that energy can be really, really difficult. And it's, you know, all you can think about is how unwell you feel. And I have been there. But once you're through that, if you can, you know, make changes to be more outward facing and not totally focused on the in, it's that the concept of serving, I think. So actually, if I think about it in my own context, so when I've not been feeling well, depressed or something, if I can turn that out, actually, you know, it's like I have something to offer the world, and it's kind of selfish to just go, oh, I don't feel good enough, I don't feel, you know, and actually I have something valuable to offer. And it's remembering that, isn't it? And so that for me is a spiritual thing. That's pretty vague, isn't it? I don't know.
Thank you for that, Chrissy.
Okay.
There's something powerful about the way your menopause, ADHD, therapy work and spirituality all weaving together. How have these experiences shaped the way you are today?
I don't know. I think I'm stuck on that one.
Well, how about, what truths did you discover about yourself going through that process?
I think all of that clearly has made me the person that I am today, all of my life experience. But it's like what I was saying before about the perimenopause bit, where you suddenly just go, oh, fuck it. And I think that has made me more confident, more at ease with myself. The ADHD diagnosis gave me answers about why I do things in a certain way, and that's okay. I'm a really good healer, I'm a really good therapist, I'm a good coach, and I feel good about that. I just feel more confident. And I suppose, without the labels, I would have said maybe that's just an age thing. You reach a certain point in your life and you just go, actually, I am all right. But I've done so much work on all of these things on myself, and I suppose I just have a desire really to help other people navigate life, because it's probably easier than we think it is, but we overcomplicate everything.
What notices did you experience? What did you notice change in you when you were going through these processes and then you were going down these rabbit holes? What did you notice about yourself change when you went that deep? What did that help you rediscover within you?
Oh, I think like this level of acceptance. Tricky question, but yeah, self-acceptance. So finding out certain things and going, okay, well that's it then. That's the explainer. And also, there's part of me as well that goes, well, it's irrelevant. All of the labels and stuff, they're all just irrelevant. They're just ways of describing something. And a client recently, it's weird actually, because some of my regular clients have also been diagnosed with ADHD in later life. And it's like they have just said, well, so what? It doesn't matter. We've just got to find a way to live. And it's so true, isn't it? The labels are just ways of describing something. And it doesn't matter ultimately what those labels are. We just have to find a way to live. And that's it. And not be too rocked by the things that happen in our lives, and find some balance and self-compassion, self-acceptance.
Yeah, it's about being careful about where you're placing your identity.
Exactly.
When you receive these diagnoses, and you find out these labels.
Yeah. And I think, as a nurse, a mental health nurse, I would see that, years ago when I was working in that way, some people would get a label and they would live up to it, live into it. And it would be the excuse for bad behaviour, or the excuse for not showing up in a certain way. And no label gives you that right, And so if you can take the label, explore it, find out what it means to you personally, and then get on with your life. That's the usefulness of a label. And a job title also. I never know what to call myself. Am I a coach? Am I a therapist? Am I a healer? I haven't got a fucking clue. But I know that I can guide and I can support people. And, that's similarly, what label do we use? How do we describe what we do for a living and who we are? They're all just made up words, aren't they?
Thank you, Chrissy. What message would you give to someone entering the menopause with no support?
Oh. Oh, the no support, that's the thing that makes me go, oh, it makes me sigh. I suppose just ask for help. Not just. That's one of the main things. And that has been a real sticking point for me. I rarely, throughout my life, have asked for help. I've always just sort of got on with things, and sort of berated myself for not managing or not coping or not finding a way of dealing with whatever it is. And actually now I ask for help, and it's so much easier. And it's actually, people want to help. People want to. They, and that's what, I don't know why it's come as a surprise to me, really, is how helpful people are when you tell them what's going on. So that's a big thing. And also, on a practical level, keep a note of your symptoms and what happens, because it's then easier to ask for help if you can describe what is really going on. That would be my practical note.
Okay, touching on ADHD, what does someone with ADHD need to hear right now from your personal experience, who may be struggling with coming to terms with the diagnosis, or just some advice you could give someone?
Oh God. Well, someone said to me, actually, before I was diagnosed, and it was a psychiatrist, and she said, if you think you've got ADHD, you probably have. And she said the reason I say that is because if you've got ADHD, you've got a hyperfocus. And if you think you've got it, you will have done more research than a psychiatrist would have done. You've gone down the rabbit hole, you've dug deeper because you've needed to find out whether you have, and you need to know everything about it, which kind of indicates that you have at least one symptom of ADHD. And I don't know if that's true, but I found that quite reassuring because I'd dug so deep and really found out everything. That would be one answer to that. The other thing I think about the ADHD is not only the busyness of my brain, my experience, but also the other thing is about calming your nervous system down. So you can find yourself being in a fight, flight, freeze, fawn situation all the time. You're on hyper alert, waiting for something to happen, and that is exhausting. So if you can find techniques of calming your nervous system down, it will benefit you hugely. There's many.
What are some of the ones that have helped you?
Breath work, definitely guided breath work. So learning to breathe, which I always think is funny, as an adult, learning to breathe wasn't something that I thought I was going to have to do. I thought I was breathing all my life. But when you do breath work, it's actually breathing in a very different way. And it's, scientifically proven to calm your nervous system down. The way you eat, if you're shoving your face full of ultra-processed foods, loads of sugar, caffeine, probably not doing your nervous system any good. So you need to think about that, take a deep dive on that. There's just loads, but those are the things that I consciously think about. And supplements, I take magnesium to calm my nervous system. Other things I will do less often, but I have a list of things that help me to feel like I'm in control a bit more.
Thank you, Chrissy. What spiritual practices have helped you that you feel would help a beginner today?
Oh. God, I don't know. I mean, spiritual practices are kind of, to me, they're almost like self-care practices, really. The two overlap so much. So, being out in nature, it's about caring for myself and it's about strengthening that connection. Using my cards is always, it's funny actually, I was talking to a friend about this last night, but I've used tarot for years and years, and I still, every time I pull a card, I have to look it up in a book. And that's okay. Everyone, so for a beginner, just pick up the book and use, and as you get to know the cards, you'll be able to interpret them more for yourself. But it's okay to not know everything. Just start somewhere. So I think cards are easy, because they're nice to look at. They get something to feel in your hands. Crystals are also nice. And if you just like the look of one, you feel connected to it, that's good enough. You don't need to look up the meaning. You just need to get your own connection. And they can be really powerful as well. So yeah, those, use some tools, pick some things up. Don't think you have to suddenly connect to source energy and open your chakras and, start from basics.
If there was a message that you'd like to share with every listener and for them to walk away with today, what would that be?
I think, maybe this is more than one message, but if you could love yourself a little more every day, and therefore trust yourself a little more, that is the important thing. And that leads to this calming of the nervous system, because if you trust yourself, then your nervous system isn't constantly waiting for something to react to, because it's present with itself. And I always think, my bigger ambition for the world is world peace. This is what I want. And if I can help people to calm themselves down and be peaceful inside, so create some inner peace, then I'm contributing to the bigger mission of world peace. So be kind, be compassionate, speak nicely to yourself, speak as if you were speaking to somebody else, because we wouldn't generally be rude and nasty to other people, so why do we do it to ourselves? So give yourself that love, give yourself that trust, and help me create world peace.
Thank you so much for your time today, Chrissy.
My pleasure.
This conversation has been honest, vulnerable and deeply inspiring. Thank you for sharing your heart, your wisdom and your lived experience. To everyone listening, remember, healing isn't about perfection. It's about meeting yourself with truth and compassion. Until next time, thank you.